a history of global politics, creating an international order. In a contemporary world with ever-changing mix of social and political changes, our world is composed of many countries or states, all of them moving different forms of government. There are different educations, social standing, religions, shown in home, and colors. Some scholars study internal politics, while others look at the deals between countries, including the political, military, and other diplomatic engagement like the relation of Philippines to China, Philippines to Japan, Philippines to America. This relation is called international relation. It is a field of study and practice focused on understanding the unique relationship that exists between various nations and cultures.
The attributes of today's global system. Our world politics today has 4 key attributes. First, there are countries interact and govern themselves. 2, these countries interact with each other through diplomacy. 3, international organizations like UN or the United Nations that facilitate this interaction. 4th, beyond simply facilitating meetings between states, international organizations will also take on lives on their own. For example, in United Nations or the UN, apart from being a meeting ground for presidents and other heads of the state, it also has attached specific agencies like WHO or the World Health Organization and the International Labor Organization. So, what are the origins of this system? It's called nation-state. This nation-state, this concept is not as simple or as it seems. It is a relatively modern phenomenon in human history, and people did not always organize themselves as countries. At different parts in the human history, people in various regions of the world have identified exclusively with units of small as their village or their tribe. They see themselves as larger political categories like Christendom, or they call it the entire Christian world. The nation state is composed of 2 interchangeable terms. Number one, it says not all states are nations. The second one says that not all nations are states. For example, in Scotland, the nation of Scotland has its own flag and national culture, but still they belong to a state called the United Kingdom. So closer to our home, many commentators believe that the Bangsamoro is a separate nation existing within the Philippine state. So meanwhile, if there are states with multiple nations, there are also single nations with multiple states. Like for example, the nation of Korea is divided into 2, which is North Korea and South Korea, whereas the Chinese nations may refer both the People Republic of China, which is the mainland, and Taiwan.
What is a state? A state is an area that is regarded as a politically organized society with a single administration. Territory, population, administration, and sovereignty are the 4 essential components of a state. A state's geographical boundaries are also established. It also has an independent governing structure and is neither subject nor subordinate to any other state. The state's population may come from more than one country. A nation-state is a state that is only populated by one nation. However, many sovereign states' population are made up of people from other countries. With deliberate effort, a state can be generated. Pakistan, for example, became an independent state after 1947. A state possesses both political and legal authority. As a result, it has the power to make and enforce laws. A nation-state is a political entity in which a group of people who shares the same history, traditions, or language dwell in a specific territory and are governed by the same government. And factors such as common race, common language, common culture, common history, and common geography help to shape a nation. None of these, however, are absolute must. A nation can thrive without a territory, for example, yet love for a common region can bring people together. The factors that combine from a nation are not always consistent. Evolution always produces a nation.
In more than 30 years' war between the major continent powers of Europe, a brutal religious war of Catholic and Protestants, the Holy Roman Empire designed a system to stop the battle that won't avert wars in the future by recognizing their domestic affairs and swearing not to meddle in each other's affairs. This system called Westphalian system. It is a global system based on the principles of internal law that each state has sovereignty over its territory and domestic affairs until Napoleon Bonaparte established civil code in 1804, or Napoleonic Code that promotes equality and abolished all the privileges that resulted the authority of men over the family stronger, deprived women of any individual rights, and reduced the rights of illegitimate children. In 10 years of Bonaparte governed, he finally defeated Anglo and Prussian in a Waterloo in 1815, resulting to restore the Westphalian system that still remains today for the international politics around the world.
Internationalism. So, internationalism is defined as a political principle that advocates greater political or economic cooperations among states and nations. It is associated with the political movements and ideologies but can also reflect a doctrine, belief system, and movement in itself. Peace and security, self-determination, economic stability, and humanitarianism are all promoted by internationalism. For example, the host country of a global international sporting events such as the Olympics will reap significant economic benefits from attracting foreign investment. The Westphalian and consort system divided the world into separate sovereign entities. Some, like Bonaparte, directly challenged the system by bringing on other states' sovereignty, while others sought to imagine other systems of governance that go beyond but do not necessarily challenge sovereignty. Internationalism desire for greater cooperation and unity among states and people. Internationalism also comes in different forms, but the principle may be divided into two broad categories. These are the liberal internationalism and the socialist internationalism. The liberal internationalism is defined as the cluster of ideas derived from the belief that international progress is possible, where progress is defined as a movement towards increasing levels of harmonious cooperations between political communities. While for socialist internationalism, it is a building of a better world based on the twin goals of equality and social justice is possible. So nations should work together to make the world a more peaceful place and to put an end to capitalist exploitations. So we have Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher in the late 18th century, who was the first major thinker of liberal internationalism. He likened states in a global system to people living in a given territory. He argued that without the form of world government, the international system would be chaotic. In short, can imagine a form of global government. We have also Jeremy Bentham, a British philosopher in the late 18th century. He advocated the creation of international law that would govern the interstate relations. He believed that objective global legislators should aim to propose legislations that would create the greatest happiness of all nations taken together. In the 19th century, liberal patriot namely Giuseppe Mazzini is the first thinker to reconcile nationalism with liberal internationalism. He was both the advocate of the unification of the various Italian-speaking mini-states and a major critic of the Metternich system. He believed in a republican government and proposed a system of free nations that cooperated with each other to create an international system. Mazzini was a nationalist internationalist who believes that free unified nation states should be the basis of global cooperations. Mazzini influences the thinking of United States President Woodrow Wilson in 1913 to 1921, who became one of the 20th century's most prominent internationals. So like Mazzini, Wilson saw nationalism as a prerequisite for internationalism. He forwarded the principle of self-determination. It is the belief that the world's nation had a right to a free sovereign government. Wilson, in short, became the most notable advocate for the creations of the League of Nations at the end of the World War I in 1918. He pushed to transform a league into the venue for conciliation and arbitration to prevent another war. For his effort, Wilson is awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1919.
The League came into being the same year. Ironically, the United States was not able to join the organization due to strong opposition from the same name. Unable to hinder another war from breaking out, it was practically helpless to prevent the onset and intensification of World War II. Despite of failure, the League gave birth to some of the more task-specific international organizations that are still around today. These are World Health Organization and International Labor Organization. It would serve as the blueprint for future form of international cooperation. In this respect, despite its organizational dissolution, the League of Nations principles survived World War II. The League was the concentration of the concept of liberal internationalism from Kant. It emphasized the need to form common international principles from Mazzini. It enshrined the principle of cooperation and respect among nation-states from Wilson. It called democracy and self-determination. These ideas would reassert themselves in the creation of the United Nations in 1946.
One of Mazzini's biggest critics was German socialist philosopher Karl Marx, who was also an internationalist but who differed from the former because he did not believe in nationalism. He believed that any true forms of internationalisms should deliberately reject nationalisms which wrought people and domestic concerns instead of global ones. Instead, Marx placed a premium on economic equality. He did not divide the world into countries but into classes. The capitalist class refers to the owners of factories, companies, and other means of productions. In contrast, the proletariat class included those who did not own the means of production but instead worked for the capitalist. Marx and his co-author, Friedrich Engels, believed that in a socialist revolution seeking to overthrow the states and alter the economy, the proletariat had no nation, hence their now famous battle cry, "Workers of the world, unite." You have nothing to lose but your chance. They oppose nationalism because they believe in preventive the unifications of the world's workers. Instead of identifying with other workers, nationalisms could make workers and individual countries identify with the capitalists of their countries. Marx died in 1883, but his followers soon sought to make his visions concrete by establishing their international organization. The Socialist International was a union of European socialist and labor parties established in Paris in 1889. Although short-lived, the Socialist International achievements include the declarations of May 1 as Labor Day and the creations of International Women's Day.
To encourage these socialist revolutions across the world, Lenin established Communist International or Comintern in 1999. The communist parties all over the world, this international was not only more radical than the Socialist International, it was also less democratic because it followed closely the top-down governance of the Bolsheviks. Many of the world states feared the Comintern, believing that it was working in secret to stir up revolutions in the countries, which was true. A problem arose during World War II when the Soviet Union joined the Allied powers in 1941. The United States and the United Kingdom would, of course, not trust the Soviet Union in their fight against the Hitler's Germany. These countries wondered if the Soviet Union was trying to promote revolutions in their backyards. To appease his allies, Lenin's successor, Joseph Stalin, dissolved the Comintern in 1943. After the war, however, Stalin re-established the Comintern as the Communist Information Bureau or Cominform. The Soviet Union took over the countries. In Western Europe, with the United States, the Soviet Union, and Great Britain divided the war-torn Europe into their respective spheres of influence. The Cominform, or the Communist Information Bureau, like the Comintern before it, helped direct the various communist parties that had taken power in Eastern Europe. With the eventual collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, whatever existing thoughts about communist internationalism also practically disappeared. The SI managed to re-establish itself in 1951 with the Socialist International, but its influence remained primarily confined to Europe and has never been considered a major player in international relations to this every day. For the post-war period, however, liberal internationalism would once again be ascendant, and the best evidence of this is the rise of the United Nations as the center of global governance.